to click like, subscribe, the bell notification, and whatever else YouTube has you clicking on to support us.
Hello, and welcome to Tokunomics. I'm Corellica Kane, and this week we're going to be talking about business terms, or as it's commonly called, business acumen, of things that you might hear being said in media environments. And I brought a guest here today to kind of give a perspective of a non-business person who is a little bit more emotional when it comes to the terms that might be used. And this is...
Business? Mankind was my business. Making lots of money was my business. Having fun while doing it was my business.
Okay, Scrooge.
Bah humbug! I'm the Kaiju no Kami from the Toku and Animation News Network.
Well, obviously this is the Toku and Animation News Network.
I will leave if you continue getting cocky with me, as my business states.
I'm a little confused now. Well, back to the conversation at hand. There's been a lot of discussion on some of the videos that we have done for Gojuger, other videos I have done for Tokunomics, and just in general, and even some of the articles and discussions that I hear him talk about from his engagements on the Twitters. I know it's called something else, but I'm just going to continue calling it Twitter because I'm old. And that's...
Isn't it called Z?
X. Oh, I didn't get that. But anyways, so with business terminology or business acumen, an acumen basically is your fluency for understanding the meaning behind words that half the time truthfully don't mean in reality what it's being said. So I'm going to start with the big elephant in the room, and that is the cancellation of Super Sentai.
What? It's hiatus, not cancellation. What's wrong with you? Haven't you paid attention to all the tweets online? It's clearly a hiatus.
Well, admittedly, I stay away from social media outside of YouTube because it's extremely toxic. And secondly, yes, I know the word used is hiatus. So I would like to first introduce you to the initial term that we're going to be talking about, and that is hiatus.
Hi. My anus?
Atus. Hiatus.
Oh, hiatus.
And hiatus technically means the temporary pause of something. That's the actualized meaning. And there's a purpose when companies will use the term hiatus.
Hiatus.
And that is really due to wanting to ensure people don't walk away from doing things. Now, let me ask you a question. As my unwilling victim, when you hear something over the years, because there's been many franchises, books, what do you think about George R.R. Martin with his book series kind of on hiatus?
Well, can he really be on hiatus when he's not even writing it?
Well, hiatus doesn't mean he has to write it. What's your favorite thing that went on hiatus?
Thundercats 2011. Still waiting for it to come back.
Now, with it going on hiatus, would you continue watching the show that already aired?
No, what's the point? It had no ending, so why am I going to rewatch the episodes that had no purpose to them in the long run?
But it's not canceled, so doesn't that mean it still can come back?
It might, because I mean it did take Samurai Jack forever, but there's no guarantee. And I mean, if it does come back, then I'll watch the previous stuff.
You bring up a good point. Samurai Jack went on hiatus. Did you still watch or rewatch Samurai Jack even though it was on hiatus?
I kinda did, yeah.
Why is that?
Because I liked it.
So, did it going on hiatus change your opinion of the show?
Not for Samurai Jack, because we already had mostly a story that felt like it was going to be completed.
Okay.
Whereas Thundercats left off in the middle of an actual unresolved plot.
That is fair. Now, would you have bought any of the figures for Thundercats knowing it was on hiatus?
Well, I did buy the figures before it went on hiatus. But no, I stopped buying them the moment the show was put on hiatus, because what was the point?
So, the reason why
And I sold off the collection.
I know you did. I remember that. Because there were things that you're like, oh, what if it comes back though? So, there is the point in fact of why you say the word hiatus versus cancellation. Because of the fact that you don't want people to stop watching. You don't want people to stop buying. And you want people to continue tuning in for everything else they're doing. Because let's say Super Sentai, for example, is the only thing that you were watching of Tokusatsu. Are you going to continue watching anything? Because let's say Kamen Rider's not your thing, Ultraman's not your thing. Are you going to continue watching Project Red if it was flat out canceled?
I don't know on that front. I would still watch my favorite Sentai series over.
Now, there's a lot of people who are going to not watch it because they expect Super Sentai to come back. And this is their way of boycotting change, so it can come back sooner. Now, the problem with the term hiatus for any sort of business is, and I read this and I love this term, it's the Schrodinger's cat of media. So if you don't know the theory of Schrodinger's cat, you put a cat into a box, seal the box up, there's no holes, you can't see into it, it's soundproof, so to speak, so you can't hear anything from it. So the question is the cat in the box? And we're not testing this ever because I will murder you.
What's in the box?
So the question is Schrodinger's cat that's in this proverbial box alive or dead? And when you go on hiatus...
Well, clearly it's probably alive when you first put it into the box, but after a few days it's going to die of starvation. So...
But the question is, because you don't know.
Well, I know how biology works. Clearly the cat's going to be... If it's been like a month, the cat's going to be dead.
The experiment was only for a short period of time. So the experiment is, and actually there have been cats who have been locked in boxes and shipped cross-country that have still survived.
Petsovernight.com.
Actually, a cat went into a box, accidentally got packaged up because it was in a return box that had to go through UPS. It was in this box because it fell asleep on top of the product and the box top had closed, and it was shipped across country, and it was in this box taped up for 3 or 4 business days. And the cat was still alive. It was hungry and very dehydrated.
Can you imagine an unboxing video? Whoosh! Hey! What? I didn't order any pussy.
And so I'm very thankful the cat was still alive, but that's another example.
Can you imagine if it was a little boy's present, opens it up and there's a dead cat in it?
Oh, try not to think about that one. Stop laughing. Okay, I have to stop laughing. But the thought process around it is when you have something going on hiatus.
Timmy's first kitty.
The question is, admittedly, is it actually going to be brought back or not? It's the Schrodinger's paradox. You will not know until you open the box, so to speak, to identify what it is.
You will not know if Sentai is going to return until it's actually returned.
Exactly. And being that it's hiatus, it's an indefinite period of time. And it does not mean it will come back. It does not mean it won't come back. Unfortunately, hiatus is, though, a nice term for cancellation. Because 9 times out of 10, when something goes on hiatus,
Power Rangers Lightning Collection,
it will never return. And it's frustrating. But unfortunately, it is the reality of it. Now, the next term, I'm going to ask you for your perspective. What do you think about the term new generation?
it means for a series that's airing currently.
So, New Generation is something that Tokusatsu really loves. It's this version of rebranding. New Generation honestly means you're reviving something to bring back old fans that may have not tuned in. I separate it from an anniversary series because anniversary series specifically, not even going to discuss Go-Juger because that's out of the window right now. It's done. We're not going to discuss that as an anniversary series. But the purpose of anniversary series of any sort is to showcase a revival of something old. A new generation is modernizing an old property to a new stage. And it can be for a television show, it can be for a toy line. Actually, you brought this up when we were having our dinner, because we don't always eat proper lunches or dinners anymore. And at Toy Fair, a lot of the toys that were being presented were toys that were really popular in the 90s. 80s or 90s. And now we have, for Project Red, their launching pad is a new generation. We're reviving Gavan for technically the third time, but we're reviving something.
Well, technically it'd be the second time, but the third version.
Yes, the third version, I mean. So, new generations do this because it wants to bring back old audiences, as well as it wants to justify creating more collector's items. Because one of the anticipated things that can happen when you do a new generation, such as Gavan, is you can now have updated molds of collector's figures of the old series alongside the new series. And people, possibly like yourself or others, would tune in and buy this. Plus, people who are fans of Metal Heroes assumptively are going to tune in to Gavan Infinity because it could be a revival of something they enjoyed. Plus, it can create this multi-generational dynamic where you're not just getting kids onto the show, you're getting all ages, from baby boomers all the way to alpha. Now, with this, we also have what's called reimagining. This is what happens when you decide you want to make something popular somewhere else. Name the most popular series that technically is a reimagination of a series in Japan. It's something you watched back in the 90s. That's still kind of around, being done by Disney now. Wow. Power Rangers.
Well,
Power Rangers is technically a reimagination.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about like...
Well, and somebody mentioned VR Troopers. That is technically considered a reimagination because you're getting into a global market.
Well, if they were to bring VR
Yes.
Troopers back using Infinity's footage.
Mm-hmm. But a reimagination, the purpose of this is getting into global markets. Obviously, Gavan Infinity is being aired in Brazil. So it's not being reimagined, it's just airing. But reimagining is another business term that you use to find ways to repurpose something into another market. Another popular franchise that is technically reimagined is Macross. Macross is a toy line.
Gundam.
You have Sailor Moon. You have so many franchises out there. And when you think of toys itself, think of anything that are based on Marvel. Any of your figures that have updated aesthetics. It's a reimagination. Transformers is a great example because the original toys were very blocky and did not have a lot of maneuverability when it was transforming. Now they're so fancy, it makes it where you have to have a physics degree to be able to transform it properly. But it was a reimagination because you were trying to make these popular figures into a way that's going to get different markets interested and engaged, both nationally and internationally. Reimagination is something that you'll hear a lot. You might hear it as not necessarily a remaster, but you'll hear it as a tone shift or a big adaptation, because you're taking something that already exists in one market, be it whatever it is, and completely adjusting it. And it means where it's literally changing, where it almost changes its name, like Macross being Robotech or Voltron being Go-Lion
and Daruger
and all of those. So another term that has a lot of armor within businesses is experimentation. What do you think when you hear the term experimentation for any franchise, be it toys, be it television,
trying
be it
new
movies?
stuff?
Do you hear positive things about experimentation?
Yeah.
Typically in the business world, when you hear the term experimentation, you tend to want to turn around and run.
See, but the difference is all of the 90s Sentai works was experimentation. The
Yes.
Reiwa era of Sentai was experimentation.
Now, the challenge with experimentation in the business world, when you're thinking of experimenting on figures to try new things, many times they want to turn around and run because a lot of experimentation can fail. More often than not, in the business world, 50% of the time, well, I would say 60% of the time, anything that you experiment on typically fails.
Like using rubber pieces on toys that tears the moment you take it out of the package.
Or, well, yeah, I remember all of that. Or even trying where, let's say for Barbie dolls, having the male Barbie dolls with human hair like the female dolls did. That didn't always work because it looked really dumb. Or trying to make gem dolls that did not work aesthetically compared to all of the other type of Barbie dolls or girl fashion dolls kids used back in the 80s. Another experimentation that did not work for a long period of time was honestly when you have Microsoft, when they had their new experimentations of Windows, I think it was Windows 8, where they had so many updates that it basically turned laptops into a brick after a while. It was either 8 or 9, I can't remember which one. They experimented so much that they had to come out with a new Windows update quicker than expected. Then another experimentation that was not successful was for a lot of the space, like for Boeing, where they tried to utilize cheaper materials, where things were falling off their planes because QC wasn't working appropriately.
Something like a vehicle is not the thing you want to try to use cheaper materials on.
Now,
Especially ones that go in the air.
well, Yes.
And ones that go underwater. Otherwise, you're going to get a compression, and we can ask the bits of those people that went in that Titanic sub what it was like to implode.
Now, the greatest example in history of experimentation, you probably won't even consciously think about this, but it's the most amazing example, is actually Ford. He experimented in multiple ways. The first is actually building an automobile.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge advancement in technology for the world because it allowed greater mobility and reduced how much wear and tear you had to do on physical animals such as horses. Because horses are still, but at that time were also very expensive and regulated to different communities, where vehicles, while expensive, had a lot more lifetime than a horse. Because unfortunately, if a horse broke its leg back at that time, it then became dinner. They had to. There was very little way to splint a horse's leg.
No, I'm just thinking, why did they have to eat it?
It's good meat.
Yeah.
Horse meat, okay, I'm not going to get into that, but horse meat is actually really, really good. But, yeah, I've never ridden on a horse, but I've eaten one. So, I've eaten Mr. Ed. Another example of Ford doing something that was experimentation is something that we still have today.
The workday.
The workday. Because of the fact that
he set a specific schedule for people to work so that they actually weren't working every day for 12, 15 hours.
And it maintained longevity within his staff. People were not overworked. And if they needed to do additional work, that's where they created shifts, where people worked roughly 8 to 9 hours a day. And if you needed more time, you'd have people working different shifts. And you can thank the Ford Motor Company for that. Now, a more modern experimentation that has worked and no longer works, if you want to think about it from a cinematic purpose, is actually the MCU. Originally, that worked because it tried something very unique, created multiple different films that could all work into a singular universe. The challenge with experimentation, and this is why it can fail in business terms, and this is why a lot of people run away, is because when you try to experiment and the formula works,
you get complacent.
You get complacent and you run into the ground.
And that's actually picking back on Project Red with them saying they want to do a full multiverse, interconnected set of stories for the entire franchise for Project Red, so that the problem is if falling into the same trap that the MCU did, where you're starting to get required to watch every single series and have an entire conspiracy board trying to connect what series takes place in one, who's in which series, which character come next with that.
But experimentation is a huge business term. You'll see it a lot, but most companies worth their salt will say experiment without a fear of failure, because a fear of failure is actually something that's considered part of a growth mindset. That if you're willing to try new things and go out of your comfort zone and it fails, and it fails miraculously, which it can, the then follow on to that is, how did it fail and how can you improve upon it in the better? To make it better. So experimentation leads to fear, without fear of failure, leads to a growth mindset. Like what you're doing is experimentation. Now, there are times where do you feel like you get complacent on what you do?
For what?
Any of your videos. Do you feel that you have a fear of failure?
No.
Do you have a growth mindset and are willing to step out of the box? Clearly, because he has me doing these videos, which I chose to do, but then became part of my job. But I love doing it nonetheless. So growth mindset is something to always think about. Now, let me go on to one of the next terms that I think I want to go into, and this is subliminal messaging for business terms. What do you think of toy companies, primarily because Bandai is a toy company that holds up this toy commercial called Tokusatsu? I'm not going to lie, as I said in my last video, Tokusatsu is a long toy commercial, just like the cartoons in the 80s. What do you think of the idea of a scarcity principle?
Well, when you are in an empty city, it's kind of a scary experience.
Okay. Scarcity principle is what? Do you know?
Limited.
Mm-hmm. How many times have you wanted to pick up something that was a toy? Even for Toku, that was extremely limited. And I know Toku is notorious for this, especially when was it Bluefin or?
Bluefin?
Yeah, when they did it.
Oh. Well, even the Power Rangers toy line, when it first came out, you could barely find the product.
Scarcity principle is a tactic that most companies use, and Bandai is actually quite notorious for it, where they make a limited production line because you can charge more and you can encourage people to want to go out to buy it. Because if you have a limited product, everybody's going to go buy it.
HasLabs.
Well, HasLab, that's purposeful scarcity principle, because that's like a Kickstarter. You have a definitive period of time that you can order. So you know it's going to be a limited production. The flip side of it is if that HasLab, which there's quite a few that have failed, that means anybody who truly wanted it will never have it. And a great example of a scarcity principle, it has nothing to Tokusatsu, but is there for gamers, is the PS5. That was a great example, except if you were Silver Quill. Then apparently all the PS5s just floated right into your arms. But in reality, for everybody else in the known universe, if you wanted a PS5 during a set period of time when it came out, Sony, intentionally or not,
same with the PS3s when the PS3s first came out,
made it very difficult to find them, to the point where people would end up going to a secondary market. And there are a lot of conversations out there, never anything confirmed by businesses, but there's a lot of conversations that sometimes certain businesses will be their own scalpers. That there are businesses out there that knowingly make it where it's going to be a limited product, that they may end up being the ones who put it on the secondary market via tools like not YouTube, eBay, or any of those others, to take advantage of the scarcity. It is never going to be proven because the legalities of it are massive, but there are chances where companies will do that to take advantage of the population that are interested in it. Now, the other thing that can come up a lot in the market of business is actually a decoy effect, where you will release something like, okay, for example, let's use Gav on Infinity. Somebody mentioned in our live stream that we recently did that the toys look better than what's on the screen. That can be an element of a decoy effect, where the television show is going to make this glitz and glam, but in a way make it where nothing is going to beat the physical thing that you have in hand. And so it's a very strategic action where you're going to make something look better in maybe a toy catalog doesn't mean the actual physical toy is going to look better, but it's going to say, well, if you don't like how it looks on screen, take a look at our toy catalog commercial, or our commercial where you get to see the toy in action. And it's going to look better, it's going to react better. I think another example of a decoy effect is actually some of the toys that you've seen prototypes for. I'm thinking specifically of NECA with gargoyles, because you had talked about...
Well, there's that. There were tons of figure arts that had been shown many years ago, because they showed a Leo and Melee figure art that never happened. Obviously, in Akiba Ranger, we were shown all the Bokingers and all the Jetman figures, and not everyone came out for those lines.
And so a decoy effect is utilized in business to say, look over there. And then they'll show you the pretty thing over here saying, okay.
Your water bottle didn't show.
Oh, right here. Saying, look over there. You're going to see what we're telling you that is out there. And then when the actual product comes out, it's going to look entirely different.
Which is why it says on the package, prototype may vary from final product.
Then
final product may vary from product.
Then there is the element of saying, these are the things that are coming out. But here's the rest of the show. Like, let's say for Geki Ranger, when you said Leo and Melee. You want Leo and Melee. Well, have you get the Geki Rangers first, because they're the core team. You want them, right? Then you'll get the villains. And that doesn't always happen. So a lot of businesses strategically do this, especially if they know things are not going to sell well. Hasbro is notorious for this because it will promote things that won't come out for years. Which I remember some of your videos where they talk about figures that you're like, when is that coming out still? And they'll keep on referencing it and referencing it and referencing it. And by the time it comes out, you may not want it anymore, but you'll buy everything else.
Here's the thing. Perfect example. Mayfex. Okay, so I got Phoenix in August of 2024.
Yes.
Rogue, 90s Rogue was up for pre-order at that time. 90s Rogue has still not come out. They keep delaying it each month.
Until they potentially cancel it. Like, think about your pre-order for Razar and Toka. You have everybody else for the NECA Ninja Turtles. Not literally, but you know what I mean. But those are two of the characters that you can't get. One, the scarcity principle is a limited figure. Then you did the pre-order, and it was delayed how many times until it was canceled?
It was, let's see, it was supposed to be out the first week of April, kept getting delayed week by week until it was canceled at the end of June.
Now, the other thing that can go on with that is called priming. Now, priming is a term that companies use, especially tokusatsu companies and toy companies. This is where they're going to talk to you about it. They're going to get you ready for this, to get you so eager that you are going to jump on the bandwagon. And many times Tokusatsu does this with its shows. For example, I think what we have right now with Zets. We have that lightning, whatever Zets' form was, that was used once or twice. And people primed you because you saw it in a trailer and you're going to get all excited. And then nothing shows for it. But they got you so excited on the episode, they had you coming back. Zenkaiger did that to you when you were going to have this big battle between Stacy and Zenkaiser. And it ended. It primed you to say, this is what's going to happen. Just be ready. And then when the next episode came, because obviously you have to tune into the next episode. And when it came, it did not pay off.
It was resolved in 30 seconds.
So priming is something that companies use quite often. Car companies do it by showing you a live commercials with all the gimmicks and gadgets that they have. Video game companies did that. Well, they do it all the time when they have their Let's Plays. I know that's more of a Nintendo thing with the Let's Play, but they primed him for years with Metroid. All I ever heard was Metroid, and by the time it came out, because he was primed so much, because, pun intended, Metroid Prime 4 was coming out, and you've wanted it. So by priming fans for that, you then get it, because logically, you have to tune in for it. But the reality is it doesn't always live up to that hype.
Nope.
Priming is used instead of hype because hype can sometimes be considered in a business term as a dirty word, because most people have a negative connotation to hype because of the way people say, well, did it actually live up to the hype that it gave? Like Go-Juger. Did it live up to the hype that everybody had for it?
Nope.
And then you have other series like Project Red. Is Project Red today, with episode 1, living up to the hype that Shirakura and everybody else was trying to push towards it?
Nope.
Those are the things, but they have to continue priming you because that's the only way they will have you return. Now, the only other thing the only other two terms I want to put, but they kind of work together, is brand equity and blue ocean strategy. Now, blue ocean strategy is something that is actually based on a business book. I used to actually own the book, got rid of it because they updated it and I need to get the updated version of the strategy. But blue ocean strategy is you're going into a market that has zero other fish. So you always hear that term, fish in the sea. There's always so many fish in the sea, and when a market is oversaturated, there is too much competition. Tokusatsu doesn't have too much competition, however, Super Sentai did. And that is because Super Sentai was a legacy, which is another business term, meaning old, and meaning something that has built selling potential. But Super Sentai was competing against itself because, as we were guilty of doing when watching Gavan or even watching Go-Juger, we could compare it to so many other shows that existed. So Super Sentai competed against itself every year. And the more series that came before the current series, the more competition it had. Maybe not everyone has seen Gold Ranger or Jacka or anything before Jetman or anything like that. But certain generations have. And certain generations have started at different starting points and have watched so much. So you have brand equity due to it. Brand equity is great because you live for brand equity. This is a human being that when we first started dating, you would not get anything generic if you could help it.
No.
It always had to be name brand because it held brand equity.
Yeah. I want Cinnamon Toast Crunch, not toasty cinnamon.
But the thing is, brand equity does not always mean quality.
Depends.
It does not always guarantee quality. Brand equity just means you know it. For example, Google is brand equity to the point where Google itself is a noun, a verb, an adjective. Rather than saying, I'm going to go to Google and search, you're going to say, oh, I'm going to go Google that.
Or photocopies, Xerox.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Xerox that. Like, oh my God, it's photocopy that. Xerox is the company.
Yes, but because there is such a small population of Xerox is what everybody knows.
Achoo! Here's a Kleenex.
Even though we do not use Kleenex in our house, we use puffs. But everybody says, do you have a Kleenex instead of do you have a tissue? Oh, I'm going to Google that rather than I'm going to search on Google. Or even if you are not using Google, you're using Bing or Yahoo or anything else, you're going to, and to think of when people talk about old internet, like the old things. Oh, you mean AOL. Mm-hmm. There were other competitors to AOL.
Lycos, because Lycos was my very first.
CompuServe, Netscape. There were competitors to AOL. However, people only have brand equity because of the most visible thing
Hotmail.
Out there. Hotmail still exists. It doesn't technically exist because it's all live for live.com or outlook.com, but Hotmail is something everybody knows. So it's a very interesting thing with brand equity. And because of that, brand equity can be a saving grace and a horrific thing because it puts you into a lot of trouble. Brand equity also can be a funny situation when you think of the term happy birthday. Because the song Happy Birthday is actually owned by a company. Do you know?
Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers has owned Happy Birthday for a very, very long time. And they recently started getting into the assumptive litigation motif. And that is because when people started recording more of those birthday celebrations at restaurants and you have restaurant employees singing happy birthday, Warner Brothers consciously thought, how can we monetize this? How can we go after a company and have them pay for using our song illegally? Because nobody actually knew for a very long time that Warner Brothers owned the song.
Comic-Con.
Yeah, Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con owns the name.
And New York.
Well, I think because they're the same company.
Maybe.
I think they're the same company.
But yes, they own the name Comic-Con, so now nobody can use Comic-Con. Unless
they're part of that company, because Colorado Springs Comic-Con still uses it. Because they're part of the same company, I think, as well. But like Fan Expo owns that name. So if somebody wanted to use the term Fan Expo, they cannot. So it's amazing how brand equity can actually kick you in the ass. Brand equity goes to medication. For example, everybody talks about Ozempic and Mounjaro. Funny fact, they're actually both owned by the same damn company. Lilly, Lilly, owns both prescription medications. However, because they have targeted the products to be so focused on weight loss management versus health, people now have a term called Ozempic face for individuals that utilize Ozempic, possibly even Mounjaro, which I'm a little terrified of, that certain things that happen to a person's face can now be called Ozempic face, which brand equity. So anytime you see somebody who has something happening, like losing a lot of weight in their face very quickly, they can call it Ozempic face because the rest of their body is not catching up.
I thought so it's no longer a resting bitch face?
Oh no, that still exists.
Okay.
This is something different. But brand equity it can be a good and a bad thing. Blue ocean strategy is where you have nobody in the market or very few competitors. Usually it's less than 10, where you have an entire ocean's worth of competition at your disposal that you are the first person to dip your toes in and take advantage. And that is actually what Project Red's goal is. By taking advantage of doing something different with Tokusatsu, it is going to encourage new markets, new insertion into communities that they couldn't do. Another great example of utilizing blue ocean strategy is having Kamen Rider Zets air on YouTube for American and other international audiences. Because of the fact that nobody else is doing it, they can take advantage and get the most insertion so that when they decide to do more with it, they have no competition. Who's going to fight them for it? Not that technically Toei has a lot of competition when it comes specifically to Kamen Rider, but it's not to say that other companies don't do that type of stuff, because even the kaiju market is very saturated. Even though Godzilla is the king of the monsters, doesn't mean you have any less of kaiju type of movies. So this is just a snapshot of all of the different terms that you can hear. And there's a lot of terms. And very few of them make a lot of sense when it comes to business. Because business typically does have their own dictionary and definition of what needs to be stated. And usually, a lot of the terms used are considered legalese, because legalese is the specialized language that lawyers make up so that it's harder for them to get sued. So that's honestly why you have terms like blue ocean strategy, because it's trying to say how the market works. Why you use a term like hiatus, why you use a term like priming or equity or things like that, because by using those types of terms, even if it is taking advantage of a consumer marketplace, even with the term reimagination, it is literally taking advantage of people, taking advantage of what's in your wallet, of your time, of your effort, of your thought process. All of these want to take things from you. And due to that, they have to have creative ways of saying it so that when you hear scarcity principle, you're not hearing, oh, so they're going to limit how many toys are available. So the question is, do I actually want to spend the money on that? No. The question is in your mind, based on how much of a fan you are, how much am I willing to spend? Not, am I willing to buy it? And we have an entire toy room that demonstrates how many times you have gone through the scarcity principle. But it happens to us all. We're all victims of it. We're all guilty of it at the same time.
Movie steelbooks are a big thing. Companies will produce a steelbook in limited quantities, and then people will start arguing over them because they want them, and then they can't get them.
Well, I think of the Nightmare on Elm Street collection.
Which Warner Brothers actually just said they will be reprinting at the end of the year.
And that's the other flaw with the scarcity principle. They get everyone to spend an excessive amount of money on the first wave of them, because there's only 3,000 copies, let's say. Then they see how many people are still chomping at the bit, and they say, okay, well, we'll reprint this, but it's not going to be as fancy or glamorous or awesome as this original printing. But are you willing to buy it still at the same price?
Oh, no, it's going to be 100%, they said. Reproduce.
I know, but a lot of companies will reprint and not give you everything. Or they'll do the decoy effect. I remember a great example of the decoy effect for you was the Doctor Who collection that did Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, and Whittaker.
That BS.
Where it showed for all of the demonstrations.
It was supposed to be a BBC America exclusive item, limited to, I think it was 5,000 copies. And suddenly, 2 months before it comes out, because BBC, you had to pay for it when you ordered it.
Yep.
But suddenly, Amazon had it up for pre-order, Walmart had it up for pre-order, Target had it up for pre-order, and some of them were also cheaper than the damn BBC America
Which
site,
you already had paid for.
which is like, well, what the hell? You said it was exclusive to your website. That is bullshit.
And it didn't look
Bait and switch.
anything like
Oh yeah,
what it was supposed to
because
be.
they showed the pictures. They were in actual Blu-ray cases. When you get it, they're in these giant ass, whatever they call those things with the trays and everything, where you stack the discs. Yeah, that was a complete bait and switch.
So, fun facts to still remember. If you ever hear the term hiatus, just think Schrodinger's cat. If you ever hear the term decoy effect, and you may not always hear the term decoy effect, sometimes you may hear, as you said, prototype does not match actual products. If you hear prototype does not match or prototype subject to change, that is a decoy effect. That is saying, this is what we're telling you it is. This is what you're expecting to get. So look over there.
Which Super 7 just did, because when they released 2003 Shredder, well, their displays at conventions showed Shredder with a plastic sash. When the figure came out, he's got a cloth sash, and it looks out of place compared to the rest of the figure.
So always think prototype might not match. Look over there. Just look to that side of the room, because that's what you're going to see and that's what you want. That's why video game companies got in a huge amount of trouble and had to put rendering does not match actualized gameplay, because they've gotten sued.
Or it has to say, or it also will say, it has to say, like, footage in trailer is footage of gameplay.
Yes. So just always think, look over there. And for scarcity, how much are you willing to spend? Not how much will it cost. Those are the things you always have to think about, because those are the games that businesses play. Businesses are a very long game of either chess, where it's very strategic, or, as I say for what I do in HR, let's make a deal. So if you like this and would like to learn a little bit more about different business terminology and how it can relate to nerd culture such as Tokusatsu or businesses or anything like that, please let us know. And as always, hit like and subscribe. That bell notification, anything else that YouTube has you clicking on to support us. I don't mention all the other places that you can find him because I forget half the time. But as always, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed Tokunomics, and we'll be back soon with some other videos. Not always with him, because he was an unwilling participant this time around.
And until next time.